So we are on day 2 of solving a system of equations by elimination. So last time we just went straight forward with the easy problems where they would eliminate right away. Today's problems are going to have that first step, which means we need to transform the system in order to eliminate one variable. This is going to require us to multiply the equations by a constant, meaning by a number. So let's write that word in. So it just means by a number. So we need to figure out what that number is in order to make sure the equations are rewritten in a way that something eliminates. So let's see what that looks like. So other than that, that's the only new piece to what we're doing today. So if we look at our two equations, the 6 and the 2 do not cancel because they're not the opposites, and neither do the 5 and the 10. But we can multiply one of the equations, it doesn't matter if it's the top one or the bottom one, such that they will become the same number but in opposite signs. So it doesn't really matter which one you choose to eliminate, it works out the same way nonetheless. So I'm going to look at the x's. And if I look at my 2x, that's negative, I know if I multiply that by a 3, it becomes a negative 6. Therefore, the 6x and the minus 6x, when I change it, will cancel out. So I'm going to be multiplying the bottom equation by 3. So that's going to be my goal. I'm going to multiply everything at the bottom by 3. The top one's going to stay exactly the same. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to modify that one. It's going to stay exactly the same. So I'm going to have 6x minus 10y equals negative 10. I'm going to modify the second equation, or I'm going to transform it by multiplying it by the constant of 3. So it has to be everything gets multiplied by 3 across the board. So I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So negative 2 times 3 will be negative 6x. This is what's going to eliminate next. Negative 3 times 5 will give me 15. And 3 times 15 will give me 45. So I just took my second equation and I multiplied it by 3. Now I'm going to use my addition method because now these guys will eliminate. So these guys now eliminate. And I'm going to use the same thing I did yesterday, which is combine the y's. 5y equals 35. Divide by 5. And y equals 7. So I have my first variable y. Now I'm going to plug that in and solve for x. Now when I plug it in, I can choose whichever equation I want from the original two or the one that was transformed. I'm just going to pick the first equation. I'm going to pick 6x. Let's try it again. So let's do 6x minus 10y, and I'm plugging in the y, equals negative 10. I'm going to replace that for the number negative 7. So again, I'm taking my first equation and I'm replacing the y for the 7. And actually it should not be negative 7, it should be positive 7. So let's fix that. Just 7, no negative. Alright, let's go ahead and simplify this and solve for x, for our second variable. So we have 6x minus 70 equals negative 10. Add 70 to both sides. And then we cancel. 6x is equal to 60. Divide by 6. And x is equal to 10. So we have our second value here. Pause it if you need time to write this down. And final answer, we have 10, 7, a single answer. And we're done with number 1. Let's move on to number 2. If you need more time, again, feel free to pause it. All right, let's look at number 2 now. And we have to ask ourselves, what can we multiply these equations by, or either one of these equations by, in order to either cancel out the x's or to cancel out the y's. So again, there's more than one way to do these. So let's decide, what are we going to multiply the equations by? So either the top one or the bottom one. So I can't multiply 2 by anything to make it equal to 7 because it's an even number. So I'm not going to multiply to cancel out the x's. I'm going to multiply the 10 here to make it into a 20. So what would I multiply 10 by to make it a 20? And if you answered 2, then you are correct. So you're going to multiply by 2. So I'm going to multiply the equation by 2 because that's going to make it into a 20. So let's go ahead and do that. So I multiply the first equation by 2, is 2 times 2 is going to give me 4x. 2 times 10, which is negative, is going to give me negative 20y. And 2 times 4, which is negative, gives me negative 8. Second equation is going to say exactly as you see it. There's going to be no change in it because that's going to be enough to eliminate for us. Just double check that you're copying everything correctly, that you're not accidentally copying it incorrectly or forgetting a negative. So the whole idea is the 20y and the positive 20 and the negative 20y's will cancel. Then we just add the x's, add the numbers on the right. So for my x's, I get negative 3x. Bring down the equal sign. Right side, we get negative 24, which means we divide both sides by the negative 3, which is next to x, and x is equal to 8. So we solved for x. Now we're going to go ahead and take our 8 and plug it back into the equation. So I'm going to take the first equation. It seems, since it has smaller numbers, it seems easier to work with. Again, it doesn't matter which one you pick, but this one just seems a little easier for me. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in the 8 for the x value and solve. So 16 minus 10y equals negative 4. Subtract 16 on both sides. Negative 10y equals, these cancel, negative 20, and divide both sides by negative 10. And y is equal to 2. So we have our second answer, second part of our answer. So these lines intersect at the point 8, 2. Final answer is 8, 2. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next problem. All right, let's get to number 3. We have to decide what needs to get multiplied in order for us to be able to eliminate. So we need to ask ourselves, which one of the two should I pick to multiply? So looking at the 4 and the 5, can I multiply the smaller one, 4, by anything to make it 5? And the answer is no. So I'm not going to try to eliminate the x's. I'm going to look at my y's now. What can I multiply 2 by to make it a 10, or the smaller one to make it the same as the bigger one? In this case, I can multiply 2 by 5 and make it a 10, but I want it to have an opposite sign. So I'm not just going to multiply it by 5. I'm going to multiply it by a negative 5, because I want to make it a negative 10 since the bottom one's a positive 10. Otherwise, they will not eliminate. So let's go ahead and start multiplying these guys. So 4 times negative 5 is negative 20x. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10y. And 6 times 5, both negative, is positive 30. I'm going to go a little over on the box since I'm out of room. Let's go ahead and do the next one. The next one does not change whatsoever. Keep it exactly the same. Just make sure you copy it correctly. Otherwise, you're going to make a mistake, which we want to avoid at all costs. All right, let's go ahead and add these using the elimination method. Cancel out 20 and 5, both negative, add up and give us negative 25. 30 minus 5 is positive 25, and divide both sides by the number next to the variable, which is negative 25. X gives us negative 1. So we have our x term. Now we're going to plug in a negative 1 either into the first equation or the second equation. It does not matter which one you choose. I am going to choose the first one for this one. So I'm going to have 4x. And I'm going to substitute the x in there, plus 2y equals negative 6. And I'm going to plug in the negative 1. Again, same old as before. We're just going to go ahead and solve this. Multiply, add the 4 over, drop the 2y, cancel, and divide both sides by 2. And y is equal to negative 1. So my y is equal to negative 1. So my final answer, I'm going to just put it on the left side because I kind of ran out of room on the right side. Final answer is negative 1, comma, negative 1 for this system. All right, let's get into our last problem. So same thing, we have to figure out what are we going to multiply these equations by in order to use elimination method to figure out our intersection point, or if it's no solution or infinite solutions. So I'm going to look at the first one. What can I multiply the smaller number to make it the same as the bigger number? So what do I multiply 2 by to make it an 8? I can multiply it by 4. You can actually do it to the second one as well, but we'll just do the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply by 4, but not just 4, by a negative 4, because I want to switch the sign, because I don't want them both to be negatives. I want one negative, one positive, otherwise they don't cancel. So let's go ahead and do that. So top one stays exactly the same, do not change it. Bottom one gets multiplied by negative 4, negative 2, negative 4 gives us positive 8x. 3y times negative 4 gives us negative 12y. And 6 times negative 4 gives us negative 24. Let's go ahead and use our elimination method. Let's add the two equations. 8 minus 8 cancels. In this case, we also get the same thing. 12 minus 12 also cancels. So both my variables cancel. It's that special case. So 0 equals to the right side. So I got to check if it's a true or false statement. In this case, we get negative 21. This right here is a false statement. 0 is not equal to 21. So in this case, we have no solution. These lines do not cross. So that means if I were to graph them, they'd look something like this. It'd be two parallel lines that do not intersect. So in this case, we have no solution. All right, let's go ahead and finish that bottom section. Please pause it, work it out, and then come back to the video and see if you got it right. So again, let's go ahead and look at these now, since you've already tried them. So in this case, which equation would you multiply, the first one or the second one? So I would multiply, in this case, I would multiply the second equation. And I would multiply it by the constant, or the number 2. So the equation would become 6x plus 14y equals to negative 24. Second one would be exactly the same. In this case, I would multiply which equation to make it cancel. In this case, you have two options. If you want to cancel if you chose the first equation, you would say you'd multiply by negative 5. But if you wanted to multiply the second equation, which is also correct, you would multiply by negative 8. So I'll just write this one out. So if you said the second equation, the first one stays the same. The second one becomes negative 48 minus 8b equals positive 72. All right, let's look at the last one. What would you multiply the first or the second equation by? In this case, you can only choose one, which is the first equation. And you would multiply the first equation by negative 3. So if you forgot the negative, put that negative. If you multiply by negative 3, you get negative 18r minus 6s equals to positive 39. Second equation stays exactly the same, and they would eliminate in this case. All right, so just go ahead and start your practice pages, all of them for Wednesday. Good luck.